Morning TV is supposed to be easy, coffee, compliments, and a couple of safe questions before the next weather hit. But not today. Today, CBS Mornings booked Meghan Markle, and Tony Dokoupil was ready to give viewers a thoughtful, measured conversation. What he got instead was a masterclass in condescension that turned a polished segment into a live on-air powder keg. By the time the countdown hit break, America was wide awake and Tony's patience was hanging by a thread. The studio glowed that signature CBS blue and gold. Sleek desk, city view, polished floor. Producers glided like chess players. Tony Dokoupil, crisp in a slate suit, checked his cards once, then again, the calm center of the swirling crew. To his right, Gayle King gave him a quick, "You've got this" nod. Nate Burleson grinned, already predicting a smooth 8 minutes and out. 30 seconds, the stage manager called. Meghan Markle entered like a whisper of perfume. The audience applauded. She smiled, poised, camera ready. Tony stood, hand extended. "Meghan, welcome. We're delighted you're here." "Thank you, Tony," she replied, sliding into her chair with precise elegance. It's always nice to speak with journalists who care about substance. Tony's eyes flickered. Compliment or warning? He took a seat. The red tally light blinked on. "Good morning and welcome back to CBS Mornings," Tony began, voice warm. "With us now, actor, producer, philanthropist Meghan Markle. She's here to talk new projects, family, and what's next. Meghan, great to see you." "Lovely to be here," she said, crossing one ankle over the other. "Let's have a real conversation. Let's do it." Tony flashed the audience a bright grin. "You've been busy. New docuseries in development, a foundation push, public appearances. Where's your focus right now?" Meghan's smile was razor thin. "My focus is always on impact, Tony. Not headlines, not trends. Impact. You don't need me to list the bullet points for your B-roll." He blinked off the bat. "Fair enough," he said easily. "But for the folks at home sipping coffee, what impact do you want them to feel?" "Awareness, depth, nuance," she said, rotating the word like a diamond. "Not the usual sound bites." "Okay," Tony said unflustered. "Let me ask this simply. What's the story you're telling now that you weren't ready to tell 2 years ago?" Meghan's brows lifted. "I was always ready. The world wasn't." A few audience members chuckled. Tony's smile held. Point taken. "Speaking of stories, how's Harry?" The temperature in the studio slipped a degree. Meghan's chin lifted a millimeter. "He's a human being, Tony, not a plot device. He's fine." "Glad to hear it," Tony said smoothly. "He's had his own projects recently." "And he doesn't need you to read his resume to me," she cut in, voice calm, edges serrated. "We know who he is." Tony's laugh was light, diffusing. "I suspect you do. People are curious, though, how you support each other creatively." "By being adults," she answered. "It's not complicated unless, people insist on making it complicated." Nate glanced at Gayle. Gayle kept her gaze forward, queenly and still. Tony shuffled a card, pivoted. "All right, parenting, 2 kids, busy schedules. How's the balance at home?" Meghan's smile flattened. "Our children are not content for breakfast television." "Totally respect that," Tony said, hands open. "I ask as a dad who's constantly failing at packing lunches." A few laughs landed. Meghan didn't join them. "I don't fail," she said lightly. "I choose priorities." Tony let that hang. "Good motto," he said. "Let's talk royal life for a beat, because it shaped the story you're telling. When you look back now, do you think anything could have prepared you for that machine?" Meghan's lashes lowered. "Prepared for an institution that treats women like ceremonial accessories? No. But I adapted faster than most would have." "Yet it hurt?" Tony said softly. "You've said that." "It hurt because people insisted on misunderstanding me," she replied. "Sometimes deliberately." Tony nodded. "Some would say misunderstandings happen when multiple truths collide. Is there any part of that time you'd handle differently?" She tilted her head. "I would have expected less from people who offered guidance. That was my mistake." Gayle's pen paused mid-note. Tony's smile thinned but held. "You've talked about telling your truth." "My truth is truth," Meghan said, voice silk over steel. "The qualifier is for people who can't handle it." A ripple moved through the audience. Tony chuckled, deflecting. I'll put that on a mug. Let me try this. You've stepped away from royal duties, built a production brand, embarked on media deals. Some critics, fairly or unfairly, call it contradictory, wanting privacy while telling your story at scale. What do you say? I say critics tend to be people who failed at doing what I'm doing, Meghan replied, the smile returning, colder now. Privacy isn't silence, it's boundaries. There's a difference. If that's confusing, that's an education gap, not a moral failing. Tony's eyebrows ticked up. Education gap, he echoed, gentle, amused. Okay. He turned a card. Reports, just reports, say you pushed for a higher budget on your next season. Creative scope, bigger canvas, true? Meghan's laugh was small and sharp. Do men get asked if they negotiated well, or do you reserve that for women you've decided are ambitious in the wrong way? Guilty of curiosity, Tony said, grin bright. But sure, let's frame it as a win. You negotiated well. I set my value, she said. If companies can't meet it, they're not ready for the work. Clear, Tony said. Last one in this block. Relationship with the UK. You've called the monarchy archaic. Any space for reconciliation, or is that chapter closed? Meghan's posture straightened, lights crisp along her cheekbones. I don't reconcile with systems. I outgrow them. The audience murmured. Tony's smile finally thinned into something like resolve. He nodded once, slow. All right, he said, voice steady. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, more with Meghan Markle on impact, boundaries, and whether criticism always equals jealousy. Something flickered in Meghan's eyes, annoyance, amusement, but it was gone before the music cue surged. The red light clicked off. Producers exhaled. Gayle glanced at Tony. You good? Tony dipped his chin. For now, Meghan adjusted a cuff, elegance weaponized. Next block, she said to no one in particular, let's skip the rhetorical traps. Tony looked up, cordial as crystal. Never my style, he said. I prefer straight lines. She considered him a beat too long. We'll see, she replied. The floor manager raised 3 fingers. 2, 1, the light went red again. Brighter this time, as if it knew. The red tally light blinked on again. We're back on CBS Mornings, Tony announced smoothly, voice steady but his eyes sharp. We're here with Meghan Markle, discussing her projects, her journey, and what lies ahead. Meghan sat angled towards him, chin lifted, lips pressed into a half smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Projects, journey, future. It's funny how people always want to frame my life as if it's a 3-act movie, she said crisply. It's real life, Tony, not a script. Of course, Tony replied, his trademark warmth undisturbed. But your life has fascinated millions. It's part of why people are watching right now. They're curious. For example, Harry, how has he been handling this chapter alongside you? Meghan tilted her head, eyes narrowing just enough to register disdain. Harry is fine. He's a grown man. He doesn't need a babysitter, or how should I put this, a morning show health check. A nervous chuckle rippled through the audience. Tony leaned back, nodding. Fair enough. I'll let him know CBS doesn't need to check in on him next time. Please do, Meghan replied, tone flat but edged with sarcasm. Tony flipped the card. Let me pivot to something lighter. Your children. Many parents watching this morning are balancing work and family. What's the routine like for you at home? Meghan's smile vanished. I don't consider my children morning show anecdotes. They're not punchlines or cute side stories to satisfy a demographic, Tony. Ever calm, Tony held up his hands. Of course. I ask as a dad. Lunchboxes, bedtime stories, the chaos of it all. But I understand boundaries. Good, Meghan said firmly, because some people forget that boundaries exist. Gayle shifted slightly in her chair off camera. Nate folded his hands tight in his lap. Both knew where this was going. Tony pressed on, a faint smile still in place. Boundaries are important. Still, you've chosen a public life. Producing shows, giving speeches, sharing perspectives. Doesn't some of that inevitably cross into family? Meghan gave a small, sharp laugh. It crosses only when journalists insist on dragging it there. My family isn't content. Tony nodded again, diffusing. Respect that, truly. Let me take this a step broader then. The monarchy. You've called it outdated, even harmful. When you say that, do you mean the people in it or the institution itself? The studio shifted. Meghan's smile grew colder. Tony, asking me to separate the monarchy from the people inside it is like asking me to separate smoke from fire. It's all toxic. Some wear crowns, some hold pens, but the system itself is a machine, and I've stepped off it. The audience murmured. Tony's grin stayed, but the corners of his eyes tightened. That's strong language. Toxic machine. Some viewers might hear that and feel it's disrespectful. Disrespectful to what? Meghan cut in. An institution that treated me as a foreign prop. Please. If calling truth is disrespectful, then maybe it deserves no respect. The audience went silent. Gail scribbled something in her notes, lips pressed tight. Nate glanced at a producer as if to say, "We're really doing this live." Tony kept his tone light, even teasing. "I'll tell you, Meghan, when my kids call me toxic, it's usually because I asked them to do homework." A few laughs broke out. Meghan didn't join them. "Cute, Tony, but I don't joke about being dehumanized." Tony inhaled slowly, then smiled again. "Understood. Let's pivot to your work. You've partnered with big platforms, Netflix, Spotify, reports, just reports. Say you pushed for higher compensation for your latest season. Ambition, negotiation. Can you set the record straight?" Meghan's lips curved into something more like a smirk. "I don't need to set the record straight. The record bends toward those who succeed. And let's be clear, I'm not ambitious. I'm effective. There's a difference." Tony chuckled softly. "That's one way to look at it, so you'd call the reports inaccurate?" "I'd call them irrelevant," she said sharply. "But I suppose asking a woman if she dares to know her worth plays well with your viewers." The words landed heavy. The studio grew tense. Tony adjusted his tie, still smiling, but his patience thinning. "For what it's worth, Meghan, I think everyone here respects knowing your worth. I just ask the questions people are already talking about." "People talk because you tell them to," she replied. "Don't pretend this isn't a loop on you created." That hit differently. Tony blinked, then let out a light laugh, more controlled than amused. "Well, if I created the loop, Meghan, you've certainly kept the ratings spinning." The audience half laughed, half gasped. "Ratings?" Meghan repeated with a clipped chuckle. "Always about ratings. Maybe that's the problem with journalism. You mistake attention for truth." Tony's smile faltered for the first time. He leaned in slightly, voice softer but firmer. "And maybe you mistake criticism for persecution." The silence was sharp enough to cut. Gail and Nate froze. The control room whispered frantic questions. "Do we cut to break? Stay live?" Meghan crossed her arms, her smirk returning. "Persecution is when a woman tells the truth and men insist on reframing it. Just saying." Tony exhaled, then smiled again, brittle around the edges. "Then let's call this what it is, a very lively conversation." "Conversation?" Meghan scoffed. "It feels more like an inquisition disguised with cards." The floor manager signaled frantically, "Wrap soon. Tension too high." Tony ignored it. He leaned forward, cards idle in his hand now. "All right," he said, his tone still calm but losing warmth. "When we come back after the break, we'll talk legacy, Meghan Markle's impact, what she leaves behind, and whether it's better measured in headlines or history." Meghan's lips tightened, her eyes flashing something sharper. "Careful, Tony," she murmured. The red light went off. "Break." But the energy didn't break with it. The studio air was thick, crew frozen mid-step. Meghan adjusted her sleeve like nothing had happened. Tony sat still, cards untouched, gaze fixed on the desk in front of him. Gail finally leaned in, whispering low. "Tony, you good?" He didn't answer right away, then softly, "Not for much longer." The stage manager raised 3 fingers again. 2, 1. The light blinked red, and America came back just in time to see Meghan lean forward, smile like a blade, and Tony's eyes, calm but storming. The show had officially shifted from polite morning banter to something live, raw, and volatile, headed straight for a breaking point. The studio came back from commercial with its usual upbeat music, but the atmosphere had shifted so much that even the audience felt it. Tony Dokoupil smiled at the camera, his voice steady as he said, "Welcome back to CBS Mornings. We're here with Meghan Markle. continuing a candid conversation about her work, her life, and her impact. Meghan's posture was perfect, her blazer crease untouched, her expression regal but edged. She leaned forward slightly, flashing a smile that looked rehearsed but brittle. Yes, candid is one word for it. Tony chuckled lightly. Well, Meghan, people tune in for honesty, and you've given us plenty of that this morning. Her lips curled into something closer to a smirk. Honesty, or what you'd call difficult. You know how it goes. When a woman speaks directly, suddenly it's a problem. Tony kept his hands folded on the desk, nodding. Not a problem at all, just a conversation. Feels more like sparring, Meghan muttered, though her microphone picked it up. The audience let out a ripple of nervous laughter. Tony leaned back in his chair, still smiling. Well, I'm a morning host, not a boxer, but let's keep going. He glanced at his next card. You and Prince Harry have built quite a portfolio. Productions, philanthropy, public speaking. Some people see that as stepping out of the royal shadow. Do you feel free of that weight now? Meghan's smile vanished. Free. Let me tell you something, Tony. Freedom isn't granted by the monarchy. It's taken. And I took mine the moment I chose to walk away. That's not weight. That's baggage I never wanted to carry. Tony nodded slowly. So no regrets at all about leaving behind that chapter. Regret? She scoffed. Why would I regret walking away from a family business that saw me as an accessory? I don't regret leaving toxicity behind. Do you regret leaving high school behind? That's how irrelevant it feels to me. The audience gasped. Even Gail raised her eyebrows at that one. Nate shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Tony's smile thinned, but he kept his tone even. Fair point. Still, a lot of people watching grew up admiring that institution. They wonder, what did you see that they didn't? Meghan's eyes narrowed. I saw the truth. The same truth they hide behind crowns and parades. A monarchy is just PR wrapped in jewels, and I refuse to play along. I've outgrown it. A few audience members clapped hesitantly. Others sat frozen. Tony tried to lighten the mood. Strong words for a morning show. You might crash our coffee sales. That earned a laugh from the crowd, but Meghan didn't flinch. Coffee sales will survive. The truth rarely ruins commerce. Tony exhaled softly, flipping to another card. Okay, let's shift gears. There were reports, just reports, that you negotiated for a bigger budget for the next season of your Netflix show. Some say you demanded more. What's your response? Meghan leaned back, eyes glinting. I don't demand, I expect. There's a difference. Men negotiate and they're called strong. Women negotiate and suddenly it's headlines. Why should I apologize for expecting my worth to be recognized? Tony smiled, though the edges were sharper now. No one's asking you to apologize, Meghan. Just clarifying. Clarifying for whom? She shot back. For your audience or for yourself? The audience murmured. Tony paused and chuckled softly. Well, hopefully for both, but let's not make this about me. Oh, but it is about you, Meghan replied, her tone dripping with condescension. Journalists always pretend they're neutral when they're part of the machine, too. You ask the questions, you shape the story, then claim innocence when it spins out of control. Spare me. The studio grew tense. Tony's smile faltered for the briefest moment before returning, though thinner now. Fair critique, he said, voice measured. But we're here live, Meghan. Nothing scripted. Isn't that what you wanted? Your chance to speak directly. She crossed her arms, gaze fixed on him. I wanted honesty. What I got was bait, asking me about Harry, about my children, about the monarchy. It's not curiosity, it's provocation. And forgive me, but it's lazy. Gasps rippled through the audience. Gail's jaw actually dropped a little. Nate leaned forward like he was watching a tennis match. He couldn't interrupt. Tony finally leaned in, his eyes calm but burning. Lazy, he repeated softly. That's a strong word for questions about your own life, Meghan. You're not asking questions, she snapped. You're poking wounds. You think you're clever, but all you're doing is recycling tabloids with a friendlier smile. Tony took a slow breath. His patience was visibly wearing thin. I think I'm doing my job, he said evenly. Asking what millions of viewers at home wonder. You came here voluntarily. No one forced you into this chair. Meghan smirked. Voluntarily? That's debatable. Let's just say invitations from networks like CBS aren't really optional when the world insists on seeing you. That was the final straw for some in the audience. A few boos echoed faintly. Meghan's smirk didn't waver. Tony straightened in his chair, setting his cards aside. You know, Meghan, I've interviewed presidents, soldiers, artists, people who've endured pressure most of us can't imagine, and I've never had one of them sit here and call honest questions lazy. The studio went silent. Meghan's smirk flickered, but she held her posture. Maybe that's because they were too afraid to tell you the truth. Tony shook his head slowly, a faint, humorless smile on his face. Or maybe they understood that respect goes both ways. The air in the studio was electric now, buzzing with tension. The audience leaned forward in their seats. The control room debated cutting to break, but knew this was too big to lose. Gayle leaned in slightly, whispering, "Tony," but he didn't look away from Meghan. "We'll continue," he said softly, "but let's make sure everyone here knows this isn't an inquisition. It's an interview, and it only works if respect is mutual." Meghan tilted her head, her smirk returning. "Respect is earned, Tony, not assumed." The tally light stayed red, the show stayed live, and the storm brewing at that glass-top table was about to explode in a way morning television had rarely seen before. The red light burned again, the cameras rolled, but the room felt like a courtroom waiting for the verdict. Tony Dokoupil leaned forward, voice steady but tight. Welcome back to CBS Mornings. We're continuing our conversation with Meghan Markle. He paused just long enough for the silence to register. And I want to be clear, this has been candid, perhaps more candid than anyone expected. Meghan smirked, tilting her head like a queen addressing her court. Well, honesty does tend to rattle people who prefer scripted pleasantries, doesn't it? A ripple of murmur swept through the audience. Gayle shifted uncomfortably. Nate clasped his hands together, his smile frozen in place. Tony gave a quick laugh, but it was thin, almost brittle. Pleasantries are one thing, courtesy is another, and I think viewers can decide for themselves what they're seeing today. Meghan crossed her legs and leaned back. Viewers see a woman speaking truth to power. That's what rattles you, Tony. You're not used to women pushing back. Gasps broke out in the crowd. Tony's eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with something sharper, restraint. I've interviewed senators, soldiers, survivors, Tony said, his voice lower now. Plenty of them women, all of them direct, none of them condescending. There's a difference. Meghan's smirk faltered, but only for a moment. If my tone offends you, maybe the issue isn't me. It's your inability to handle strong women. The audience audibly reacted. Someone in the back whispered, "Oh, wow." Tony sat up straighter, his patience gone. Let's stop right there. Meghan, you came here to promote your work. Instead, what we've seen is someone dismissing every question as beneath her. You've called it lazy, toxic, irrelevant. But these are your own choices, your own statements, your own life. You built this platform. You can't sneer at people for wanting clarity. The studio fell utterly silent. Meghan blinked, her smirk faltering. I'm not sneering. I'm setting boundaries. No. Tony said firmly, the smile gone. Now you're setting walls, and there's a difference. Boundaries protect dignity. Walls shut people out. What you've shown today isn't strength, it's arrogance. The audience erupted in a mix of gasps and scattered applause. Gayle's eyes widened. Nate muttered under his breath. Oh boy, Meghan's voice sharpened. Arrogance? You dare call me arrogant after everything I've endured? After being hunted, dissected, vilified? Tony cut her off, his voice rising but controlled. And yet you're here on our platform, with cameras rolling. You say you despise the spotlight, but every deal you make, every production, every interview pulls you back into it. You reject the monarchy, but live off the fame it gave you. Without Harry, without that royal connection, you wouldn't be in this chair. The words hit like a hammer. The audience gasped audibly. Meghan's eyes widened, stunned. For the first time, she looked caught off guard. Her lips parted, but no words came immediately. Tony pressed on, quieter now, but even sharper. You talk about truth. Well, here's one. Respect is earned, Meghan, and shaming every question, sneering at everyone who asks doesn't earn you respect. It alienates people, it insults our viewers, and it insults the show. The silence was thunderous. Meghan's face hardened, jaw clenched. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping back. If this is what you call journalism, Tony, she said, her voice trembling with fury, then maybe I was right to walk away from institutions like this. I don't need to sit here and be lectured. She unclipped her mic, letting it drop with a thud onto the desk. Without another word, she turned and strode off. The audience sat frozen, some stunned, some clapping, others whispering frantically. The cameras stayed live. Tony exhaled slowly, then turned back to the lens, his expression firm but apologetic. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice calm again, "we bring guests here to have conversations, sometimes hard ones. What you just witnessed was not how we expect those conversations to go. I apologize to you, our viewers, for the disrespect you saw this morning. That's not what this show stands for." He held the gaze of the camera, resolute. "We'll take a break. Stay with us." The theme music swelled, the screen faded, and the clip was already on its way to being replayed, dissected, and remembered as one of the most explosive moments in CBS Mornings history. If you enjoyed this dramatic showdown, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you never miss the next explosive story. Your support keeps these incredible stories alive.